Hi, fellow introverts. It has been really exhausting for me, this sort of like a celebration of interaction of the active people, and then I have been having a really the nightmare about the switch point for the last 2 days. So I decided that I'm going to ignore you. You're not here, and I'm going to continue on with my monologue. And then if you want to laugh at me, that's fine. If you want to ignore me, that's also fine too. So I came to the United States in 1997, and then since then that everybody says like you are not really typical Japanese. And then the reason why I think that many people say that I'm not really typical Japanese is like I break harmony. Like many people think that my comments and what I say is kind of inappropriate, and then often the time it's rude, and then kind of critical, and then also that the people really get threatened by that, I guess, that what I say. And that the people really like the things that I'm kind of like a harmony breaker, and which is really unfortunate. Because in the culture of Japan, that where I come from, and then I'm wearing kimono, and then I'm in heels, that the harmony, being harmonious is such like a critical importance to it. I don't know how many of you have seen that the recent newspaper article that the Japanese emperor is abdicating soon, next week actually, and a new emperor is coming into sworn into the throne, and then we're going to have a new era of Reiwa. So every time that we change emperor, then we're going to have a new era starts. And then this Reiwa, that the new era actually means beautiful harmony. And then I'm being Japanese and then told that I'm a harmony breaker is a very unfortunate thing. And then I probably really the reason why that I'm not living in Japan anymore. But I just want to say that I was not really born this way. You know, I have been born in many other ways, but not really like I was not born as a harmony breaker. You know, but then what really happened was when I was a third grade, 9 years old at the primary school, my father decided to come to the Parents' Day for the Japanese class instead of my mother. Usually that my mother comes to the Parents' Day and she's pleased whatever I do, and then I will get chocolate and cake and everything. But then my father decided at that moment that he's going to come to my class. And then he came to this class, and then after the class that he pulled me into his office. And then that looked at my eyes and then said like, Dai, this is my father, by the way. Dai, I am so disappointed with you that everything that you have said during the class is so conventional, and then you don't have your own perspective. Remind you that he's telling this to the 9 years old. But then that time that I decided that, okay, if you say so, you will get what you want. I am going to develop my own perspective. I am going to challenge every assumptions that I can point out, and I am going to break the harmonies here. And then, to the horror of my father, I actually became a professional harmony breaker. The reason why I'm talking about this, about my habit of breaking the harmony, or I'm getting paid as a harmony breaker, is that I really want to break the harmony of switch point. You know, the switch point seems like a celebration of the innovations and the creativities and then new way of thinking and then happiness. And then I want to say that the innovation sucks. The innovation sucks is sort of like that we are in the innovation fever these days. You know, I think that the innovation is probably one of the most common words that I heard since I came to this switch point. Every presentation seems to use the word innovations, innovate this and innovate that. And then also like innovation seems to be very critical for IntraHealth strategy. I mean, if you look at the website of the IntraHealth, and innovation is one of the 4 pillars of our company corporate strategy, And then as a result of that, they created the position of the chief technical officer, and then they hired me. So I am supposed to be advancing the innovations at IntraHealth, but then actually I'm challenging about that. Also, that if you look at the USAID, Gates Foundations, and Canadian government funding, Japanese government funding, all the government agencies and donors, and then also foundations, celebrates that the innovations, that the grand challenge, for example. That's like a really critical element of like our funding. So I am, as an MD, I went to medical school, by the way. So as an MD, I have a right to diagnose your symptoms, and then you are actually having this incurable innovation fever. It's a deadly disease in global health. But what I'm not really saying to you is that it's like we should go back to the old way of doing the business, right? Because, think about it. IntraHealth decided to be status quo and then go back to that old way of doing business. We will be out of business in 2 or 3 years. So we cannot really do that. So what I'm saying by the innovation hacks here is that we have to have a really cool, cold-hearted, and then really like a somber approach to thinking about the innovations rather than getting the fever from the innovations. I think that really matters. The reason why I'm talking about this is because I actually has been having this innovation fever for the last 10 to 15 years myself. So I used to, for example, I used to work for an organization which were invested more than 10 years into the development of the self-sampling for the cervical cancer screening, for the HPV screening. We spent 10 years, we spent $2 to $3 million, and then also like 2 rounds of the mergers and the acquisition of the partner companies. We actually succeeded in seeing this technology developed. But then have you heard of the self-sampling of the vagina swabs for the HPV vaccine in Africa, HPV screening in Africa? Maybe 1 or 2 people have. But it's not really there for you to know. We kind of failed. So but then we wanted to spend we needed to spend this 10 years and then also like $3 million and then others because we believe that creating this self-sampling screening will help the people, will help especially the rural women who may not have the access to the cervical cancer. And really, we thought this has to be the greatest thing that we can work on the cervical cancer prevention. And then at the end, that we got really this innovation fever, and then that lasted 10 years, and then at the end, you didn't really see the product. So what I'm really proposing you to have is this. Let me introduce you to Mr. Wonderful. I don't know how many of you, actually, I have this a really serious biased perspective about the global health people like yours and an artist, that you do not watch reality show on TVs, especially main networks. But there is a TV program called Shark Tank, which is coming out with a new episode every Sunday at 10 p.m. on ABC. You will be able to watch that on this coming Sunday, right? And then in the show that the innovators and the new business owners and then the great idea people will come, and then we'll make the 5 minutes pitch, and then they will ask for funding or they will ask for investment. And then Mr. Wonderful will ask the questions. And then they will make, he's super rich, so that he will make the decisions on, okay, I'm going to put my money into your innovations or not. But it's hardly ever, if you watch the show, he may be impressed with the innovations and technologies, but he would never really invest into the technologies. He actually invests to the persons who is working on the innovations. And then the reason why that is important is because he wants to know if the innovation workers or a person who is working on the innovation actually understand the business or not. What is the cost of the goods sold? How much does it cost for these innovations to acquire a new customer? How difficult is it, like a cervical cancer case, how difficult is it to educate the persons that this is actually better than going to the physicians, that this customer acquisition cost actually is a real cost, and then you will need the money even if you do not want to make profit. And then also like understanding that the true demand, separating the true demand from the need. Because we can always say, oh, there are like 100,000 of women or like 1 million women dying from the cervical cancer. But what is the really the true demand that who wants to use and who will use and then have access to the self-sampling of that for the screening? So understanding those demand is really critical. So what really matters to me, and then what really matters for us to really think about is, don't get really blindsided by this wonderful idea and then celebrate the innovations. I mean, it's okay for you to do that for the switch point kind of that occasions, but as soon as you go back to the office, think about it. And then what I'm really asking you to be is, you want to become a Shark Tank person or Mr. Wonderful, and then you'll be able to have a really cool understanding and then the cold-hearted way in thinking about the innovations. So what I'm basically asking you to do is go back to the house where Shark hat. So every time that you hear the word of innovation, once you go back to the office, think about this Japanese guy wearing the kimono on the stage with the shark head, asking you to think about the innovations from the critical look. Don't look at the innovations, because that's really deceiving. I am asking you to look at the person who are working on, persons who are working on innovation, and then ask the hard question about the money. Money is not a dirty thing. Money is really important. If you are working for nonprofit like IntraHealth and do not want to make profit, it's okay. You still have to think about the money. So just remember, you can take a picture of me and then put it onto the wall. And then every time you hear the wall, look at my photo and then think about the hard question you have to ask. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak.